Every parent today wants their child to be a super kid, want to see them grow to be a superman. Let's find out if there is more to parenting, or is this the right way to progress. Thank you, Lovelish, for joining us
Yes,
on
Prakash. Good
this.
morning.
Good morning. Do we mostly see our own expectations, hopes, and projections in our children and expect them to grow up that way and start providing for them?
Yes, to a great extent, that is what we are observing in parents
Mhm.
these days. Their expectations, their worries, and anxieties are all is what our children bring, and it can be seen working through our children on day-to-day basis. So, to answer your question, yes, it's pretty much dominates the whole parenting idea, the whole parenting aspect that is there to a family.
Mhm. Well, can we break down this word parenting? What is this word parenting about?
So, whenever you discuss parenting,
Mm.
such, I always bring an element of parenthood along with it.
Mhm.
Now, these are not the same thing. While parenting may come somewhat naturally to parents, but parenthood is a different ball game altogether.
Mm.
Parenting essentially means I have brought a child. Well, that's not even the case. You actually bring a soul. There's so much of difference in orientation. But to begin with, and we'll go deeper into this.
Mhm.
So, as a parent, I bring a child. I try to see how I can take best care of my child. So, whatever I am doing to the child is what can be classified under parenting, for example.
Mm.
Parenthood is what child does to you, what this parenting is doing to you as a person, as a human being. And that is not natural to parents. They most often than not are guiding, directing uh, children. So it's an out to out kind of a process. You never look within as an individual. How is my preparation? How do I look or regard my child as? What happens to me when I'm interacting with my child? You understand that? So,
Yes.
so this is completely closed. It's passive. So it's always me and the child and what's transpiring, but never between me and me.
Mm.
That is parenthood, and both need to work together. So this whole adult thing, proprietary thing, need to drop. Father, mother, these are the roles that take the better of you. I mean, that is what you project. But behind the father, what about the person? I think with so last 25 years in education, when I really look at a child, whether the child is in a school environment or at home, and this is my observation,
Mm.
the child seeks a person behind the facade. The children are not interested in roles. They want to interact with the personality that's there behind the role, behind the teacher, behind the father, behind the mother. So that is where I personally think that we need to maybe revisit and recalibrate what this whole parenthood game is all about.
Let's forget these big words for a moment, and then I want to go back into this point you mentioned about facade. Okay, the child does not see a father or a name, but the person behind it. In fact, the child sees everybody as who they are. Okay, so having said that, are we trying to put ourselves into a role and trying to push the child into what we want them to grow up to be?
Yes, that is what is happening. If you talk about schooling, is there a choice for the child? Can the child really decide for himself or herself?
It is parents' assumptions and decisions that.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you ask me, can a 4 or 5 year old actually decide? My answer would be yes.
Ah, okay.
Children can decide. But there is a way to approach this. The first thing that children catch is that all of us, whether children or an adult, we really deep down, we know what we need.
Hmm.
That need has to be identified. But as an adult, we think that the child is young, too early in life to sort of decide where the child would like to go. So therefore, I am a father or a mother. So I will be a proxy to my child and decide what is perhaps best for my child. Intention wise, nothing wrong in it. You want the best for your children. But the way we approach is perhaps, as you just mentioned, is wholly and solely adult driven. And when I say adult driven, it's the way a father or a mother would look at life. It's the way the father or the mother would understand education to be. So their understanding is what directs the child's first initial, whatever, 10 years, 15 years of education.
My initial reaction to when you said, can a 4-year-old decide, was no.
Yeah, I
Okay.
could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I, as a parent, have been interacting with my child over a period of time. So there is some portion of me also in the child there. Can you can we talk a little bit more about how the child can decide? What is there in the child that decides?
So the first thing when I said a 4 year or a 5 year old can actually decide, and you said it was a, may I then ask you, why was it a shock to you?
I assume, or I understand that the child has not developed the mind to an extent to make a decision.
Exactly. And a 4 or 5 year old child cannot decide.
Hmm.
That is an established assumption
Correct.
in an adult, in a father or in a mother. Now, if you put a child in an environment, let's say they want to come here and explore, since we are at a CFIL campus, we can take an example. When a child comes in and walks in here, what we do is we just let the child be. And we also ask the parent to observe what's happening, to just feel, observe, see what the child is doing. And we also do that. And you can very easily figure out what the child is feeling inside, what the child is up to. It requires a certain degree of your faculty of observation to be at its peak. And then you can perhaps have, not even, there is no requirement for a conversation. You just know that the child is enjoying the space that is out there, and has the freedom to move, uh, experiment, think. Nobody is judging, nobody is directing the child. The physical space for a 4 or 5 year old, the first thing would that a child would like to experience or come to terms with is the physical space. That is why I keep saying that the built pedagogy means the space that defines how learning happens is extremely crucial. The more the natural environment, the more the child would want it.
Hmm.
because the child can relate to it. But the moment you have structures, not enough light, and corporatish kind of architecture, it limits the child's consciousness.
Hmm.
So when the child experiences and sees that, wow, this is a place where I can explore, I can run about, I can breathe, that is something that a child really wants, and you can easily make that out.
Hmm.
Basis that, the parent can then decide, okay, wow, this is a fantastic environment, because the child is telling you something, whether the child is enjoying or not. But if you keep aside the child and the adult mind comes in, then the game is over for the child.
Most of the time, the adult mind, or as a parent, you look at the infrastructure, what is that the school bringing in, digital boards and all of these, and the boards, CBSE, ICSE, and so many other things. These are the factors on which the parents make the decision for the child, but they do not pay attention or observe the child's movements and the feelings, or maybe they're ignorant about it. How can they become aware that what is that a parent can do to see and observe the child, what the child is doing, how is the child making those decisions?
Okay, so too many questions are there. Let's try to address one by one. You talked about school.
Yes.
So first, how many schools would even allow that kind of a freedom for the child to roam around and figure out whether this is really the place I like? And if by chance the child does say that I don't like this space, well, 9 out of 10 parents would say that, well, that's not the case. How the school is like this only. So parents perhaps don't take children seriously at that age. But there is a fundamental question to this, which is, how do I regard my child as? That will decide the whole of your parenting and parenthood. If the child for me is just a utility, for example, I don't know if there is a better word that I can use, but in the sense that, all right, I've got married, there has to be a family, so let's procreate, have a child, and the child goes to school. The child will, at some point in time, become an adult, start earning, etc., etc. Very typical of the families that we find. And then there is a deep-seated expectation that when I, as a parent, grow old, the child will take care of the mother and father. If that is the case, then, well, you can follow the mainstream path, which is again a mainstream parenting. But if you regard your child as a soul in evolution, then the ball game changes. In fact, then the whole parenting game changes. Then you just allow for this evolution of the soul to happen. You create conditions, you create an environment, you choose an education which is in alignment to this school of thought, which you can categorize as, let's say, evolutionary education, evolutionary parenting. So which way you want to go? Those who choose the latter path, which is more of a sansaric, if I may allow me to use the term, which doesn't, there is no sense of, there is no questioning. Nobody is questioning who is a human being, what is the fundamental aspiration of a human being, etc. Then you would obviously, your first requirement would be what kind of board you have, etc., etc. And that is what I see parents doing these days. But there are parents who regard their child as an individual. They don't see themselves playing that kind of a role as a father or a mother. but they also see that what the child brings to the family, what happens to me as a person, and together how do we become a better version of ourselves, how do we continue to grow in consciousness. If this is the language that some parents are talking, then the path is different.
Good. Now, there is a clear distinction between some parents wanting this or starting to think like this, and others who are still in the paradigm of the sansaric,
Yeah, the
if I
mainstream.
may say, mainstream. Now, how do we, what should we just allow the human to experience and come to this side of wanting evolution, or is a nudge required? What is the nudge that we can look forward or have to move from this ignorance to start thinking about evolution?
You're talking about the nudge for parents, right?
Nudge for parents. Let me put it in a different way.
Sure.
I'm talking about the mainstream. Okay, so I have my own ambitions and fears, and how my child will grow up to be, what will they be doing in the world, and all of these fears, ambitions, and inhibitions creep into me. Okay, and want to follow the herd of norm. I'll send my child to whatever board, and whatever everybody is doing, I will do that. Okay, it's a complete paradigm shift to think completely different. Now, what is the nudge that will enable them to think in this direction?
It's very difficult. Not that it's not possible. The speed with which we live life is like riding a tiger kind of a situation. Parents are busy, father is busy following his own, not really passion, but the need, not even a need, actually a want to grow in his or her profession or corporate job or whatever it is, the economics of running a home, etc. And these days, likewise, the mother. And it is a fact that you need a certain amount of currency at the end of the day to run the show at home. So very seldom does it strike parents to maybe step back and figure out what really is happening with my child. And let me share this with you. Children grow at an equal pace. I mean, a month's time for a child is a lot of time. The child would have grown thanks to the kind of experiences that the child has. And so it's really like two parallels. Unless something strikes, you take a pause. So as a human being, you take a pause. You look at your work, what am I doing? And this is for both. And then you look at your family, what are we really supposed to do? Then you look at your child as an individual, as a parent together. And then perhaps, you start questioning. It's all about questioning. Are we doing the right thing? Am I really observing my child grow beautifully, grow organically, grow naturally? This requires a certain degree of stepping back from life. If you are asking me a nudge, I do not know if there is a nudge. What will make parents step back? I have no idea. I really do not know.
If I say that Look, anyway, the mainstream or the normal education is not going to help in the future or even the current situation in any which way or means, because I see it in my own work,
Yes.
and we all see it, the skill sets and the behavior and the attitude and everything the child comes out with a lot of inhibitions that I know all. Most of the children have that as well. With this, you cannot live in the you know in the current world as well as in the future world. Is that not a nudge enough? But even with that thought, I still have to step back and look at it.
Yeah. It's all about stepping back. And even more fundamental to this is, as a facilitator or as a parent, so we don't make any difference between the two. There is no teacher in a school and parent at home. It's one and the same thing. There is no different environment in school and at home. It has to be one whole identical culture in which our children should grow. The fundamental question really is, and parents must address this, what really is learning? What do we mean by education? That will define their scope of schooling and parenting.
Wonderfully said.
How does a child learn, or how do I learn as an adult? And the fact of the matter is, children don't like being taught. They will learn what they have to learn. They will learn what they really need to learn. All that you can do is, as a parent, identify those learning needs in the child at various stages of her or his life. A 5-year-old child may want to learn something which attracts him. When he or she is 10, your need can be different. All that you have to do as a facilitator, as a school, as a home environment, is to provide for variety of experiences and see what interests a child. That will then decide whether you really need a school. If you do need a school, what kind of school? But if you go to a mainstream, they will give you a prefixed agenda, a prefixed curriculum, nothing less, and in fact nothing more. If in grade 5 I need to know grade 6, grade 7, you are not allowed, because that is going beyond the syllabus curriculum so defined. Does it really hit a parent? What am I really doing with my child? Do I even know what her excitements are, what her needs are? What is it that my child really likes? What is it that he or she doesn't like? Where are those likes and dislikes coming from? These are the questions for parents. To look at the child and see how much of me is my child reflecting. If that really is the case, what is it that I need to do? Children are a direct reflection of the environment that they live in. If it is an environment of anxiety, worry, excitement, that is something which they will demonstrate. And we see this on day-to-day basis. If the environment is that of freedom, patience, joy, fulfillment, not so much of excitement, then you see the child growing differently. So there is really, until a certain age, nothing wrong with children. It is and when I say environment, I am definitely talking about a physical environment, but I am also referring to a psychological environment at home. How do I take care of my material things at home? So we give a tremendous amount of importance to material care. How do I see my father and mother behaving at home? What is it they bring to life? These are small little observations that the child is constantly doing, but we know not. The child is very observant, just soaks in the way my mother and father walk, the way they keep their stuff, their belongings, the whole culture with time, with food, with what they do in life. All of that is what the child is soaking in. So it is very simple. You provide a kind of an environment, children will. You provide a B kind of an environment, they will flourish. That is all to parenting and education, to be honest with you. Which means that the arrows are pointing towards me, my own culture, my own inhibitions, my own worries and anxieties, and you will see once this change, that changes. That is something which parents don't want to do. Anything that we have to do ourselves, we don't want to do today. What is the next question that you have now?
How do I step back? See, stepping back, mentioning stepping back is good, but how do I step back from the ownership of a child? Because that ownership is what is not allowing me to see the individual.
Yeah, well said. It's not even ownership, it's a proprietorship. My child, of course, realistically speaking, nothing wrong in thinking my child, but then what? This stepping back, you said, moving away from ownership requires a tremendous amount of detachment in the right sense of the word. It requires one to look at life holistically, to question really who am I, what am I. Once that knowledge dawns, then you look at the world in a different way, including your child. A child at the end of the day, or even we at the end of the day, are supposed to be individuals or an individual. What does that mean? Which means that I have my own freedom, freedom of choice, freedom of being. If I am living out of freedom, I can give freedom. But if I am not living out of freedom, then it is impossible for me to give you freedom. I'm just giving you an example. Living life without any prabhav, influences. There are very interesting studies where they have observed when twins are born, there would definitely be a lot of genetics, hereditary that is there. But if they are brought up in different environment, then they become a different version. There are many studies there that they have really observed first 15, 20 years, and when they were brought face to face, when they came face to face after so many years, it was found that different characteristics altogether. So hereditary will have certain play, but it's the environment that will have the maximum play, I think. You can still look like your father, mother. You can, certain tendencies can still be transferred. Disease can also happen, may not happen, we don't know. So genetics, etc., nature will have its play, but the nature versus nurture debate is a very long, very old debate. We have seen, whatever I'm sharing with you, Prakash, is basis our observation, with children for so many years, and parenting these days is not at all easy. Parents are struggling. They're asking basic questions about how to deal with children at home. This is what we have come to.
Yes.
Anyway,
But going back a little bit in our conversation,
sure.
You mentioned, are we bringing the child and, does child belong to us versus, is the child simply coming through us, which also relates to that individual aspect.
Yes.
Can we discuss a little bit more on that?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's a life, a soul that has taken birth, has chosen certain circumstances for its own evolution. The way I would start looking at it will determine how I live my life, which will include the child in the family, which will include the kind of decisions that I make on day to day, very practical decisions: which school to go, what job to take, what job not to take, how much of time is required with the child. And if this whole parenting game poses a certain challenge to me, then how do I address? It's not always the child, it is you, your incapacity, your incapability. So if you regard your child as an individual, a soul in evolution, then everything changes fundamentally. Because what are we really saying when we say the challenges of parenting today? It is our incapacity, right? You bring a child in a world which is almost an AI world today. What do you expect? Even the MRI studies these days show that the synapses, the neural links in the brain have now changed. It is changing every 5-10 years. It's as if it's already inbuilt in them. The future of technology is inbuilt in them, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because we took a lot of time to sort of understand the whole technology game, but right from the word go, they adapt, they know. So difficult times, of course, unless and until we step back, reconsider every institute, school, schooling, parenting, marriage, etc. We're not going to find solutions. A fundamental change in consciousness is what is required, not quick fixes here. You can't fix a square peg in a round hole, can you? It will just pass through. So individuality is that when you grow without any prabhav, when the psychic comes in the front without any influences, it is allowed to operate in your mind, in your thinking, in your imagination, in your judgment. The whole psychological and emotional play in life. All of that. The idea is to not teach. The idea is not to instruct. The idea is not to tell. It is for the child to figure out how he or she wants to learn, where, what she wants to become in life or be in life. That is being an individual. But do I myself regard myself to be an individual first? If I do, then all my relationships, whatever I do in life, are based and premised out of that. There is too much of role playing happening in life, too much of role playing. It's just sort of stuck. And the child learns to see that his father, mother, role playing is happening, and they're telling me something. When I go to school, teachers are telling me something. So, where do we allow the sense of individuality to blossom?
We are not. If we can make an attempt, how do we honor that uniqueness in the child? How do we identify that prabhav, swabhav, and what is that we can do? We are where we are, but what is that we can do now? How do we identify this?
First step is to become aware that this is happening. If it were not to be the case, then you would continue, no?
Yeah, I don't know the problem. There isn't nothing to be done.
Absolutely. And in knowing this, you would even know what needs to be done. So there are no tips.
Absolutely.
It is just to figure out what is happening. And in exploring what is happening, in knowing what is happening, you would know what needs to be done. And again, I am saying for the second time that will require a tremendous amount of effort on the adult. Are we willing to do that?
We must explore. We must move in that direction.
Also, Prakash, because there are no red flags, no? Life is going on.
Why should I?
Everything is happening. We are eating food. We have a home. We have mobile phones. All those things are there. We have car. Where is the problem?
We have information also. We know everything.
We know everything. Today, ChatGPT will tell you. In fact, very interesting discovery. Most of the parents are now relying on the ChatGPTs of the world
To parent?
For parenting tips. What should I need to do? And it's increasing. In fact, for that matter, anything else, the first go-to person is ChatGPT. Whether it is your health or anything at all. Right? So it's always finding a solution, never going to the fundamental of why it is at the first place. You see that?
Yes.
Always finding a solution. Why? Because we have been born and brought up in a question, answer, examination paradigm. There will be a question, you have to find an answer to that question. Same goes for life. There is a problem, I need to find a solution to the problem. It really shapes your thinking over a period of time.
It happens with me all the time.
Yeah.
And it's so much difficult to step back and start observing and go to the fundamental question, as you said, which ChatGPT is not going to give you.
Yeah.
It is very important for us to step back, contemplate, observe, think, ask those real fundamental questions which the technology cannot provide, but only through introspection you can get there.
Yeah. I will keep my conversation to the central point, which is what really does it mean to grow in consciousness? What does it really mean to learn? What is this learning all about? How does it happen? Where does it happen? What is the trigger? What are the via medium through which it happens? And then, of course, figure out education. There are too many words out there: education, learning, literacy, and all of that. But if we know how an individual grows, then your decisions will be in accordance with this understanding.
That is the fundamental question.
Absolutely. There is nothing more. There is absolutely nothing more to it. Not even for parenting, also for all kinds of relationships. But since this is more on the issue or challenge of parenting and parenthood, I told you in the beginning, it's an imbalance. Parenting versus parenthood. That has to be corrected. And unless and until we look at these two aspects together, we're not going anywhere. 12 years, 14 years, beyond that, I don't even know what parenting we need today. A child who's 12-year-old today is like what we were, 18, like 18 years old. So they are much more knowledgeable, advanced, whatever you may want to call it. First 14, 15 years is all to parenting. I've been saying this, you've heard me saying so many times.
So many times. And parenting is not what generally understood as, and there's a lot we have talked about, and there is a lot to think about what parenting is. More of observation, stepping back, contemplating, thinking, seeing individual as what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Lavlesh. There is more to talk, and I think we will discuss more on learning.
Yeah.
What is learning? What is education?
Yeah, these are all. You cannot take this as an isolated subject.
Correct.
Our approach has always been that of a holistic, integrated, integral approach. You cannot pick this up and address this as a separate subject altogether. The whole of life is interwoven, integrated around something which is bigger than or higher than what we consider ourselves to be. So the more we think holistically, better we will be able to understand and appreciate life in its truest sense.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you keep living in these silos, you will end nowhere. Life is changing. Change is the only constant. What we call gati. Every moment changes are happening. It is impossible for you to keep up to those changes. It's beyond adapting and adopting game now. It is addressing those fundamental things about life, which we will talk in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.